My name's Joel Francisco. We're over here in Helen, Georgia, Alpine Volks Fair. This is my 1995 Audi S6. May or may not have a V10 in it. Originally it had an inline 5-cylinder. I pulled that out, put an RS6, like the 4.2 turbo from the RS6. The same time I had that going on, my dad had a B5S4, and there was another gentleman on YouTube that was swapping a V10 into a B5S4. So I ended up purchasing the V10 right around the same time. The 4.2 kind of just disintegrated. So I had a perfect owner car and a perfect engine, and I was like, let's try to make this work. So essentially this is a Audi derived 5.2 from the C6 S6. I purchased this car at auction from Copart. Basically what you're looking at, it's a factory 5.2 that Audi made and developed. Like aftermarket parts go, it's basically a bone stock engine. Haven't pulled it apart, haven't done anything other than changed out the rear timing cover from a B7 RS4, and that basically allows you to bolt up OA3 or O1E manual transmission. It's a common misconception with these Audi V10s that they're actually Lamborghini V10s, and Gallardos that they're known as, those came with a 5-liter. These are 5.2. These were developed by Audi for Lamborghini when they purchased Lamborghini. This engine will come in like the LP Gallardo or the Lamborghini Huracan, and in my case, the Audi S6 or S8. Oh, so my favorite part of the build would have to be the Lamborghini Huracan headers. Had to source those from eBay. As soon as I got them, the first thing I did was I cut them up, $2,500, and just sliced them right in half. Cut the flanges off because Lamborghini and Audi 5.2 flanges that those headers came on are different than the manifold flange these 5.2s have. I had to have a custom set fabricated, and I kind of just welded them together. I don't even want to think about how many hours I have into this thing. Many long nights in the garage. But to get this engine with the headers to fit, the frame rails had to be notched. I had to box them out, welded that in place, test fit the engine, pull it out, test fit the engine, pull it out. You have to utilize pie cuts. I'm sure there are other ways to do it. This is how I went about resolving the issue that I had concerning space. This car was never designed with this in mind. S6 chassis, that this is known as, came with a inline 5-cylinder turbo from the factory. So I had the length is fine. Basically, my main concern was the width. And then I'm able to fit a triple pass aluminum radiator with custom end tanks, as well as a 2-inch fan with the shroud on it. So it packaged together very nicely, and I'm extremely happy. On a hot day like today where you have 90 to 95 degree temperatures, I can have the hood closed, the car, it'll see like 210, radiator fan kicks on, drop it right back down to 190. She just keeps chugging. So because of how I have the downpipes from the headers coming, it just wants to hit the tie rods because these aren't recessed like most newer vehicles. They're up top and they're just in the way, almost hitting the top of the bell housing of the transmission. Yeah, it wasn't fun, so I had to do some custom bending of tie rods, heating them up. This car does donuts, and at full lock, it goes right back to on center, so no complaints there, hasn't broken yet. Motto is, if it hasn't broken yet, chances are you're good to go. It'll roast all 4 in first gear. No problemo whatsoever. So for me, it's like, what more could you ask for? I know a lot of people always mention like, hey, go twin turbo. The issue I run into that, there's really no aftermarket ECU that can run 10 direct injectors that isn't Syvax. For those that don't know, Syvax is like $12,000, $14,000. So to add just the standalone on top of the ECUs doesn't make a whole lot of sense. I'm happy with the car as it stands. 20,000 miles on it so far, and she's still kicking pretty good, so. So every time I take this thing out, people are always asking me, hey, what ECUs are you running? What aftermarket ECU are you running? The answer is simple, it's factory ECUs. The way I have them set up, it's basically like, you could call it a standalone because I just need the throttle position cable wires, a couple grounds and a couple power wires with a little help from my tuner, Blake Beetle. He's out in California, known this guy for years. Yeah, he just made this thing a solid ripper. The very first drive with this thing, I tried leaving as many parts of it off as I could, like the hood, the bumper, because if there was a fire, which let's be honest, I wasn't too confident at first. I was gonna be able to see it immediately and be able to put it out immediately. I had 3 fire extinguishers with me. I will say that was probably one of the most satisfying moments I've had working on cars and just being a part of something cool like this. Well, you have months that go by of just countless hours, and then to be able to finally start that thing up and hear the neighbors say, "Oh God, it's Joel again," or hear your wife say, "Hey, turn that off." It's a good feeling. It's a good feeling. I've replaced the starter, the ignition cylinder. It goes.
Is your battery dead?
No, you just gotta kind of do the jiggle and there it is. 60% of the time it starts every time. Yeah, it's a AEM CD5, plugs right into the factory OBD2. So that's kind of the issue with the swap, is everything, the S6 factory ECUs they utilize CAN bus. All these gauges, however, are analog. So you would have to buy like some adapter and do some coding. I'm not that kind of guy. We just gotta go over this little bump, scrape a little bit. It's okay. Oh, love it. You gotta be respectful in Helen, because you don't want it to end up like Sowo did. But it's okay to give a little. After we got the immobilizers defeated, the speed sensor issue sorted out that was preventing the car from going over 4,000 RPMs, was basically like fuel cutting it. Once we got all that stuff sorted out, I haven't even messaged my tuner about having the car retuned. I think like we were only on the 2nd or 3rd revision, and I was like, okay, that's good, we're good. Year and 2 months, here we are. Haven't changed a thing on it. I probably have close to 20,000 miles on this build currently. The only things I'm concerned about on like road trips and long extended drives, stuff that I can't control, like hitting stuff in the road. It's basically you get in, you turn the key, and you know for the most part that you're gonna be good. I had a turbo 4.2 that was making roughly 600 horsepower prior to the V10. Obviously the V10's slower, but in terms of like the raw power, the torque that you get from it, and especially the sound, I think it's the sound that really makes this car what it is. That exhaust that you saw originally on the back of the car, hanging off, a lot of people refer to it as the pretzel shit. Rightfully so. That was my attempt to kind of fix an issue that I created when I first created the exhaust manifolds from scratch. I didn't make them equal length, so I figured maybe having an extra X pipe in the system would be more beneficial. Why not do something that has like Lamborghini roots? They'll do stuff like that, so I thought it would be cool. It was extremely obnoxious, but I loved every second of it. And with these new equal length Lamborghini Huracan headers, I necked it down to 2.5 inch. So it just wouldn't make sense for me to have a 2.5 inch and then have a 3 inch setup that I had on it before. Also, I didn't like the way it sounded because it's just too many extra bends. You lose a bit of what makes a V10 a V10. Ultimately, I just decided we're just gonna run a factory location exhaust. That's basically what I have on it right now, so. You guys see that? I like it. I had the original 290,000 mile 5-speed transmission 01E in here. Due to my neglect, not an issue with the transmission, I ended up kind of grenading it. So the next best thing for me to do is buy a 6-speed out of a B5 S4. The 6-speed one, she has some miles on it, and but no grinds yet. So probably the hardest part of this car, you know, aside from the mechanical stuff that I'm more than capable of, it would have to be the electrical. OBD2 CAN bus base electronics with the factory ECUs, factory wiring to fit in a vehicle that's not OBD2. It's 1995. Everything's analog. I know how to pin wires. I know how to trace stuff. I know how to read schematics, which is a huge help. Finding the source, like the material, all the reading material of the diagrams, the schematics. I guess Audi's not too keen on lending that stuff out if you're not like in a garage or whatever. So being able to have access to that stuff was challenging. There were times when I would have to wait a week or two to be able to have access to that reading material. And then once you get it, you're having to read through 100 pages worth of just line diagrams. It gets frustrating. You have to have a book, you have to have a notepad, and you just have to go one by one. What do I need to make this car run? Eventually, you find what you need. You're able to apply it to the vehicle and create kind of a standalone, basically only using the essentials. And then everything else that you don't need gets coded out of the vehicle. Why I thought this car would be like a good donor to kind of take apart and play with, especially with the 4.2 turbo and now the V10, was the body wasn't in great condition. It wasn't pristine collector car edition. That's kind of my argument to all the purists out there. I'd say, like, why would you do this? Because there are only, you know, sub 300 of them brought in 1995, or 4 rather. You know, it has rust on it. Like the frame, the subframes, all that stuff is straight and true, which means I get to do donuts and enjoy it. I feel now that I'm done with the mechanical aspect of it and electrical, I can kind of start making my way, you know, fixing the doors. I have all new doors for it. I'm trying to source fenders. What's up, bud? Unfortunately, the front fenders are flared, so getting those, again, rather difficult. The camper, it's a Smitty-built camper, and then it comes with a Smitty-built awning. Not ideal for when you're doing like a cross-country road trip. Yeah, I probably stopped like 5 times for fuel, and each time was like $80, $90. But it's okay, because you use this like it's a credit card type of deal, and you get like points back. You just got to make sure you pay the credit card off. I made custom coilovers for it. It's kind of sitting at a ride height where I can drive it and not have to worry about like bottoming out or hitting debris in the road. 500-pound springs in the front and 700 pounds in the rear, because I do like doing donuts. The inspiration to this car, Martin Harp, like I said, he's helped me out tremendously. I've been badgering him with questions on it, and he was always there to answer them for me. He's actually the one that got rid of the immobilizers so I could do like the first startup and everything. And the thing I like about these older cars is Audi really overbuilt them. And I think it shows with kind of the abuse that I put through this. And, you know, we're still here, still running and driving, sometimes, most of the time. I always tell people, if you like looking at some dude beating up his car at his expense so that you guys can enjoy watching videos, check out my Instagram. It's RS6_Jolio.